Shalom, beloveds of the King. I come to you today in this day on the 4th of January and of 2023, and I am bringing a prophetic word that the Father gave me on the 31st of December 2022, on the last day of this Gregorian calendar, as I was spending quiet time on Shabbat up on our little Mount Zion and just spending quiet time with the Father, when just meditating on His Word and just allowing Father to just take me through what all has happened in this year, and just reflecting on many things that happened within this last year of 2022, and just sitting with the Father when He started to give me a prophetic word. And I have been sitting with the word, and today, on this day, which on the Father's calendar, it is the 10th day of the 10th month. So we are on the 10th day of the 10th month, and this is the day that the Father has told me to release this word. And so the Father has been speaking to me quite a bit, because we are in this time. You see, Father works, we are living in this world, and unfortunately, whether we want to believe it or not, we are still in this calendar, and we are still subject to this Gregorian calendar, even though the Father has got His own calendar, and that is really when we are to look at His seasons and His times. But the whole world is following this calendar, apart from the ones, including the Christians, are following this calendar, except for those that have become more set apart to know the Father's ways and to know the Father's calendar and His precepts and His ordinances, and to follow in His ways. And so Father has been speaking to me about the season that we are in, because from the time that we have come back from Israel, from the last feasts, we now start in a preparation over the next 6 months. From the time we had Sukkot, we are now in the preparation for the next feasts. So we are actually in a time again where we are in a season where we are in a transitional place where Father is preparing us for Passover. And so just by listening to that word, Passover, we need to prepare ourselves to pass over. And so at the end of the day, there is much that is taking place in all of our lives. And I'm sure you are no different to me, where you would understand that there's many things going on in your life right now, like it is going on in mine, where the Father is really putting us through great introspection to be able to see what is there. Because if we are going to pass over, we need to understand that He is now preparing us to be able to stand before Him, preparing ourselves once again for our new year, which is going to take place in March, and then our Passover that will be, in April. And this is what we are preparing ourselves for right now. And that is why Father is taking us through a time now where He is really shining the magnifying glass in all of our lives. And this is a time where, more than ever, if there's ever been a time when we are now to come and set ourselves apart and humble, now is the hour. And this is why once I've shared the word, I'm going to first share the prophetic word that the Father has given me, and then the additional things that the Father has been sharing with me, so that we put this whole message together to hear, as we are not only preparing ourselves for a 2023, but for the fact that we have to prepare ourselves for this year that is going to be for the feast, for everything that is upon us, and especially as we prepare for Passover. So this is the prophetic word that the Father gave me on the 31st of December 2022. My child, I have a lot to say to you about the coming season that man is coming into. As the world prepares to come into this new year of 2023, do they have any idea what awaits them? Do they have any idea that this last year was part of their preparation of what is to come. Eye has not seen and ear has not heard what is in store for those who love me. But for the rest of the world that have now entered into the darkest hour that mankind will yet experience. My child, this was a difficult year that you experienced. You say this was a year of much trials and much tests, because man's hearts were being weighed in the scales. I said I was going to test the fruit by Sukkot, and many have started to fall away because the fruit was tested and found wanting, because they did not allow me to come and do the deep work in their hearts. Man prides themselves in standing right with me because of how I use them or bless them. That is not the criteria. I see how obedient you are to my word, spoken or written. I look at the heart. I test the heart and the kidneys. I test the thoughts of man. But man thinks they stand so right before me because of all the outward things that they do to impress me, or they give me all their sacrifices. But when I squeeze them in the testing, only then do I truly see what is within you. In the wilderness, they also worshipped me with their lips, yet their hearts were far from me. There are many that are so prideful that they think that they stand so right before me, just like the Pharisees and the Sadducees. They stand so prideful because they are so self-righteous in all their good works that they offer me. That is like filthy rags if you don't come and humble yourselves before me and acknowledge your weaknesses, your sinful nature, your pride and self-righteousness. But many are now going to fall in the days ahead because they never allowed me to do the deep work within their hearts to truly clean the inside of the cup. People think that it is okay just to clean the outside of the cup. And that is why they give me all their good works. But the inside is filled with envy and jealousy, slander, bitterness, unforgiveness, all this that is hidden, the hidden sins of the heart. And people walk around with all of this and they think that they are pleasing to me because they offer me all their lip service. If you have not allowed me to clean you up, you will not stand in the days ahead, because all the open doors in your life, the enemy will use to your destruction. And instead of you being used as a vessel to bring me glory, you will be used as a pawn in the enemy's hand to bring destruction in my kingdom. I said that every decision that you make is going to cost you. If you sowed to your flesh, you will have reaped destruction. We are now getting ready for the final battle between good and evil. Remember, Noah's brothers and sisters that were of the righteous seed also fell as they allowed themselves to be corrupted by the serpent seed. The serpent is now out in full force, having to bite many with its venom, so that they will crave for the tree of knowledge and the works of the flesh that many chase after, more than actually craving for my presence and walking with me, as Noah did. Noah walked with me. He did everything I told him to do and was humble and a righteous man. He desired to obey and listen. Many listen to my word, but they don't put it into practice. But my sheep will hear my voice, and a voice of a stranger they will not follow. They will be my remnant bride of these last days. They are my faithful servants that will abandon all to answer to the call. Many challenges are going to confront you in the days ahead. And even now, many that are first will be last, as they will fall when the pressure comes, because they have not learned to hear my voice and follow my instructions in all I will say, as they are still tied to the things of this world and will not be willing to lay down their lives, but only the faithful servants who are going to endure to the end. Now in this hour, to humble yourselves. Now is the hour to humble yourselves under my mighty hand, as I know the end from the beginning. Stay close to me. Surrender all to me. I am the one that will not let your foot stumble. I am the one that will direct your path in this time ahead. If you are surrendered under the shelter of my wing, come up the mountain and behold my glory, as Moses did, so that you may shine my light to a very dark world. Amen. This was the word that the Father gave me. And then as I sat and I was meditating on this word, and it's a difficult word. It is a word where Father is really speaking that there's going to be great darkness. There's going to be a great battle, a battle between good and evil. And the battle is increasing. And what is so sad to me is the fact that I see the battle increasing more and more in the camp of the believers, where brother is turning against brother in their own camp. The enemy's plan is to be able to get the people to be able to come and fight within their own camp. And that is why the Father is saying that we truly need to humble. We truly need to bow our knee. We truly need to repent and turn back to Him as Him being the only source. So then the Father started to speak to me, and He said, go and look up the concordance reference, 2 concordance references, H 2023 and G 2023, because in those concordance references is going to be the key to what we're going to need to do in this time ahead of us, in this year, and be it whether it is 2023 or be it even as we are preparing for our new year that will be in March, we are to be preparing ourselves, because this is the season that we are in. We are in the season of preparation. We are in the season of where we need to prepare ourselves for a Passover, where we are going to have to pass over into the fullness of the things that the Father is wanting us to be able to come into. And so many people clean the outside of the cup, and this is the danger in the Torah movement. The danger in the Torah movement is the danger that we have felt that we are so righteous before the Father because we do all these outward manifestations. It doesn't help you if you keep all the feasts and all the Passovers and all the Shabbats and all the feasts and everything for the Father, yet our hearts are not right before Him. Yet in our hearts, we still have this arrogance and this pride and self-righteousness, just like the Pharisees had in the time of Yahushua. That is why He's looking for a humble heart. And so He said for me to go look up the concordance reference of H 2023. Now, H 2023 is the word hor, and that is also comes from the root word har. So it's hor, or it comes from the root word har. And that word har is mountain. It's a mountain range, and it is the word for mountain. So the Father was impressing on my spirit as I was up on my little mountain there, just myself and the Father, up on this mountain, and He said, my child, this is what is going to be necessary in this time. And then He started to give me the understanding of what it means to come up the mountain. Remember, He tells you in Matthew chapter 24, when you see all these things happen, flee to the mountains, because it's on the high place where you need to draw close to the Father. You see, where are the eagles? The eagles are not flattering around on these low surface places, on this level ground where we are. The birds of the feather are the ones flocking together, but what are the eagles doing? The eagles fly high and they go into this place of where they are in a high place to be able to be in a heavenly place. And this is exactly what the Father wants us to do, to come higher up on the mountain. So I was being reminded we need to flee to the mountain. What did he say to Moses? Come and be set apart on the mountain. Come and draw near to me on the mountain. And it was in the mountain that Moses was given the commands. It was on the mountain that Moses met with him face to face. It was on the mountain where the Father came to be able to hide him in that mountain. That he was saying, come up the mountain. Then he prepared the Israelites and he said, come up the mountain, because on the mountain I am going to reveal to you my ways, my commands. So we need to come up the mountain in order to be able to hear his voice, in order to be able to hear him be the one that needs to speak to us, the intimate things that he wants to reveal. Unless you're going to come up the mountain, he's not going to be able to reveal to you what is there within your heart that is not pleasing to him. It was going up the mountain, you see, when they were to be able to break down the altars. So you see, when we come up the mountain, it's there up on the mountain that the Father will reveal to us what are the idolatrous things that are still within our hearts that are standing in the way of him. Up on the mountain is when you draw away from the things of the world and you come up and you draw close to him, and you come away from the things of the world and you draw close to him up on the mountain. Up on the mountain is when the place is where you have to destroy all those altars and all those idols that are there that are standing in his way. Up on the mountain is the place where we will draw near to him, where he is the one that is going to be able to speak loud as he gave the commands. The mountains there was smoke coming out of the mountain. His presence was on the mountain, and it's in this high place that he wants us to be able to draw close to him. Interesting. It was when they went up to the mountain of transfiguration, when Yeshua stood, he had to go up the mountain, and it was on the mountain that he was revealed, that he came into his glorified body. And that is when he saw Moses, and they saw Moses and Elijah as Yeshua went up the mountain. So the Father is calling us to come up the mountain. That we need to come up the mountain to draw close to him. That we need to come aside, that we need to come away, because on the mountain he wants to speak to us. He wants to speak deep into our hearts to be able to show us what is there that is still standing in the way of him. Then he said, go look at G 2023. And G 2023 means fully supply, aid or contribute. That is the word, but it means to add. So what the Father was showing me is that this is the word to add. So if you're not going to come up the mountain, what is going to be added to you? You're either going to have the destruction that is going to come in this time, the things of the world and the darkness that's going to be added to you, or you are going to have his bountiful supply that it will be added to you. So what is it that is going to be added to us? And it's so interesting because that morning, on the day of the 31st, Father had me go and read 2 Peter chapter 1. And it's very interesting because this word of add to is in 2 Peter 1 verse 5. And so we're going to have a look at this word in 2 Peter 1 verses 5. So we're going to have a look at 2 Peter. I just want to read this word from 2 Peter. In 2 Peter chapter 1, And I'm actually going to start reading from verse 4. Through these there have been given to us exceedingly great and precious promises, so that through these you might be partakers of the mighty like nature, having escaped from the corruption in the world caused by lust. So we must understand that there is a lot of corruption in the world that is going to come now. The greatest corruption that we have yet seen is the corruption that is going to come now. And this is why we need to understand that there is great destruction that is coming upon this earth. And if we are still those that are going to be attached to the lusts of the world and the lusts of this flesh, what are we going to have added to us? And this is what we really, really need to understand. So if we have a look at verses 5, and it says, so from verse 4 he says, we need to escape from the corruption in the world caused by lust. And for this reason, verse 5, and for this reason, do your utmost to add to your belief uprightness, to uprightness knowledge, to knowledge self-control, to self-control endurance, to endurance reverence, to reverence brotherly affection, and to brotherly affection love. And so we need to understand that just in this there is a mouthful all of itself, because the Father is saying that we need to be able to make sure that we do our utmost to add to our faith, to our belief. So it doesn't help us just to have faith. We need to add to our faith uprightness, which means we need to walk upright before the Father. We cannot turn around and say, oh yes, I keep the feasts, I keep all of this, but yet in our hearts, there is still the wicked things that are dwelling within our hearts. We need to walk upright before the Father, because understand, He spoke in this prophetic word and He says, I test the heart and I test the kidneys, and therefore we need to clean up the inner man. It's the inner man that needs to be cleaned up. It's that inner man that we need to be clean up. Now, we have done a very good work of cleaning up the outer man in terms of coming into obedience, in keeping the ways that the Father asks us to keep. But now it's time for us to take a look at the inner man, the soul man. It's the soul man that wants its way. It's the soul man that is the I that must submit and surrender. The I that still gets offended. The I that still wants its way. The I that still stands in the Father's way to have the Father have His way in us. And this is the problem that is within all of us. And this is the very thing that the Father has been doing a great introspection, even within myself, to see, my child, do not pride yourself in all these outer things, all these outer manifestations of the things that you do, because I look at your heart, I look at the inner man. And how does your heart stand before me? How does that stand before me? And I tell you, yesterday I listened to a prophetic word, and I'm going to send out this prophetic word. And there was a prophetic word of a young lady that is still in a church system, but she sent the most powerful prophetic word that lines up with everything that the Father is saying. This is a word absolutely from the Father's heart and what He is saying in this hour. And so that's why He says we need to add to our belief uprightness, and to uprightness knowledge. What knowledge are we supposed to be adding to ourselves? The moral wisdom such as is seen in right living. So it's not just knowledge of the word, but the knowledge of that is seen in right living, in living right before Him, in putting this word into practice in our lives. It is the knowledge of that comes from G1097, which means to know Abba Yahuwah, to have a knowledge of Him, to have a knowledge of what is pleasing to Him and what is not pleasing to Him, of a knowledge of an intimacy between a husband and a wife, that knowledge that we have with Him, that knowing Him, to know, to perceive, to recognize, to understand, to become acquainted with him as a husband and a wife. That is the kind of knowledge that he's wanting. And so he's saying, and to uprightness knowledge, and to knowledge self-control. Why? Because when we truly get to know him, and we truly get to know what is pleasing and what is not pleasing to him, then we need to exercise self-control. Because if we know something is not pleasing to him, then we are going to have to exercise self-control in our lives to say, even though I don't want to do this, even though everything within me, it does not want to do this, but I know that it is the right thing to do, and therefore I do it. And that is what we need to do. We need to exercise self-control. We can no longer stand back and make excuses for our childhood things and to say, oh, it was because I was hurt as a child, or because this happened and this is why I behave this way. The time has come now where we need to take stock of our inner man and say, if the enemy is going to knock on my door, I have the authority to master over it, because let me tell you something. The enemy is on the prowl and is on the loose, and we are either going to submit and surrender to the enemy's plans and how the enemy wants to use us because of our soul wounds, because we are not willing to surrender them to the Father and allow him to heal us, and we are not willing to exercise self-control in our lives, and therefore we just fear and give ourselves in to our flesh man. And I tell you this because just as I was up on that mountain and the Father has just given me a powerful prophetic word and telling me the serpent is now on the loose. And this is exactly what it's been, because over the last couple of weeks, so many snakes that I have seen. And I'm coming down from the mountain, having spent all this wonderful time with the Father, and what am I confronted with? A puff adder snake on the path where I need to walk. And I stopped in my tracks, and this puff adder was puffing at me. And now I'm standing there looking at this puff adder and thinking, my Father, what on earth? And I looked at the snake, and my initial instinct was to fear. Of course, it's a snake, and this is a very dangerous snake. But I stood my ground. And this is what we need to do. We need to learn now to stand our ground. And in my hand, I had a stick that I'd gone up the mountain with, like a staff. Because we've learned here on the farm, if you're going to go up a mountain, you better take a stick, because you don't know what you are going to encounter. So I took the staff up with me, the stick. And as I'm coming down, I'm holding the stick and I'm looking at the snake, and I spoke to the snake and I said, now listen nicely. I have been given authority to stand on scorpions and snakes. Now either you go into the wild where you belong, or else I'm going to kill you today. And that is just where I stood, and I stood in the authority to know that I have been given authority over scorpions, over snakes, and I'm not going to fear the snake. And this is what we need to understand. We are not to subject ourselves to the devil and his demonic ways and his little speaking in our ear and allowing us to go into the places of rejection and all these places that, wounds that are opened, and we allow ourselves to go into these places. Now is the hour for us to overcome. And so he says, and to knowledge self-control. So you see, we have to exercise self-control. So we have the authority to control that which comes through our mind, that which goes through our heart, whether we're going to get offended, whether we're not, whether we're going to get into bitterness, anger, hatred, unforgiveness. And you know what? We're going to fail tests, but we are going to eventually overcome them, believe you me, because this is what the Father wants. And to self-control, endurance. And to endurance, reverence. We need to reverence the Father, you understand. We need to fear him. We need to reverence him. We need to fear Abba Yahuwah. And to reverence brotherly love. We need to have love one for another. No greater love is there than for you to lay down your life for a brother, and for you to have love one for another. And therefore, a brother is not going to slander another brother, as the snake will do, spitting, these cobras that spit. And to brotherly love and to brotherly affection, love. And so this is why I'm saying that we need to acknowledge self-control, and to self-control, endurance. We are going to need endurance in the days ahead. In the days ahead, we are going to have to endure. We're going to have to endure many things. And that is why I'm saying the battle is going to be fierce. The Father has shown me this is going to be a fierce battle. And that is why the enemy is going to try and destroy the camp from within. And that is why we have to stand. And that is why we're going to need to be able to have affection and love. We are going to have to get over ourselves, and the only way that we truly can have love is when we have love one for another. We need to have love one for another. And this is what the Father wants us to have. And then he finished off with Psalm 23, and he said, my child, this is going to be the psalm that you are going to need to stand on in this year, in this season, is going to be Psalm 23. And I'm going to finish off by reading Psalm 23. Yahuwah is my shepherd, I do not lack. He's the shepherd. Why do we need to lack? He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He turns back my being. He leads me in paths of righteousness, and for his name's sake. When I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, so even though we might have to go through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. We are not to fear evil no matter what. For you are with me. He will be with you. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. He has a rod to correct us. He has a staff to lead us and to guide us. And therefore we must understand his rod is going to come and correct us in this time. But his staff is there to lead and to direct us, to part the Red Sea for us. You spread before me a table in the face of my enemies. And so even though the enemy will want to come against you, he will make your enemies be at peace with you, is what the word says. Even your enemies will be at peace with you. Even your enemies are going to be at peace with you. You spread before me a table in the face of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup runs over. My cup runs over. Our cup will run over. Only goodness and loving commitment follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Yahuwah to the length of days. So we are to go up the mountain into that place of where his tabernacle is, tabernacle with him on the mountain, for him to show us his glory, that we may walk in the fullness of his glory. So may Abba Yahuwah bless you all. And may he grant us the grace and the mercy that we need to be able to walk humble before him, to realize that from dust we come and from dust we shall return. And that is why he said to Moses, remove your shoes, come back to the dust, humble yourself before the mighty hand of Abba Yahuwah, reverence him, fear him, know he is the one who wants to do the mighty work within all of us in this hour. May Abba Yahuwah bless you all. Shalom, shalom.